This is the Alden Report.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by connectioncapital.com. That's CONNEXTION capital.com. That's CONNEXTION capital.com. You are one connection away from your life changing forever. You know, have you ever tried to connect with somebody on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or even Clubhouse, and you couldn't quite connect with them? That's because the biggest gap in the world is the gap of access. It's not the wealth gap. It's not the credit gap. It's the access gap. Connectioncapital.com is leveling the playing field, and it's free to join. Visit connectioncapital.com, CONNEXTION capital.com. Again, it's CONNEXTION capital.com. You are one connection away from your life changing forever.
This is the Alden Report.
All right. Well, my name is Michael Alden. We are here in Blue Vase Studios, and I'm actually rocking my Blue Vase t-shirt. It's a little warm out here in Massachusetts. I got my Grateful hat on, and as always, I do have my 99-cent glasses. And I always tell people, man, how excited I am to be here, how grateful I am to be here, and I always am, because the guests that we get on the Alden Report, I'm just so lucky to be in their presence, to be able to learn from them, and to be inspired by them. My next guest has actually been ranked as one of the top 8 most inspirational people of all time. I didn't even look to see who the other 7 were, but I can't wait to find out who they were. My next guest is Sean Swarner. He is just an amazing individual. He's a world record holder. He's a 2-time cancer survivor. He's an author, motivational speaker. He only has 1 lung. He's climbed Mount Everest. He's done so many things. Listen, whatever he's doing and whatever it is you think that you can't do after this interview, whatever it is you think you can't do, you will 100% do if you just listen to what this man has gone through in his life. If you think you have a tough life, if you think you're having a bad day, wait till you hear this guy's story and what he's doing. Super excited to have you here. Sean, thanks so much for being my guest.
My pleasure, man. I'm jealous because it's warm where you are. It's 4 degrees here. We got about 8 inches of snow last night in Colorado.
Well, it's beautiful, man. I have some friends that are out there. So, look, I saw your story, when it was presented to me, and I was watching one of your speeches. I think it was CancerCon. And I was tearing up, man, just listening to it. So for those who don't know you, let's just get into your story, and so I'll fast forward to 13 years old. You're playing basketball. Then what happens?
Man, that's when my entire life changed. My friends were worried about so many petty things in my eyes because I was diagnosed with advanced stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the oncologist told my parents, "Look, your firstborn son has 3 months to live now," and there's nothing they could do about it. I mean, I don't know if you have any kids.
I do. I have a 15-year-old daughter.
So can you imagine your 15-year-old daughter getting diagnosed and having an expiration date of 3 months? You can't do anything to take it from the child. You can't do anything to help them. It's that person's battle. Granted, yeah, cancer is not an individual disease. My parents went through it with me, but that was just the first one. I mean, I went through, God, I don't even know how many rounds of treatment, but I gained 60, 70 pounds, lost all the hair in my body, lost my friends. I pretty much lost everything. But then I was in remission for a year, and then going in for a checkup for the first cancer is when they found the second cancer. So it's crazy if you look at it, because the first cancer wouldn't have been found if I didn't have the knee injury, and the second cancer wouldn't have been found if I didn't have the first cancer. So the second time around, actually, believe it or not, in one day, they found a tumor on an X-ray. They did a needle biopsy. They took out a lymph node. They put in a Hickman catheter, which is like a permanent IV. They cracked open my ribs, took out the tumor, which was the size of a golf ball, put in a drainage tube, and started chemotherapy. And this time around, it was so devastating and so aggressive. The doctors told my parents this time around that I only had 14 days to live.
It's just unbelievable to me. And what you've accomplished since then, we're definitely going to get into that. But I wanted to ask you, look, right now, everybody's going through a lot of stuff with COVID and especially the young kids right now, the socialization and I didn't honestly think much of it, because I'm like, kids can adapt, they're malleable. They can do, they're used to being on their computers and phones and things like this, but it's definitely taking its toll on the, on mental wellness and mental health. And that's obvious now because you can't even find a therapist for kids these days. So at 13 years old, you obviously have your parents and obviously other family members, and you have doctors and things like, but like, what's it like? I mean, what was really going through your head? How did you, how were you dealing with it? I mean, I was watched one of your stories when, the hair was falling out of your head and you were just in the shower and you were in tears. Mentally, can you just walk us through that? Because it just gut-wrenching as a 13-year-old boy. I mean, you were just basically, I mean, did you think you were going to die? I mean, tell me, I'd just like to hear it. I mean, I don't know if I like hearing it, but I want to hear it because I think a lot of people, you've either gone through it or going through it or have friends that have gone through it. I just like to know what that's like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at such a young age, the first one, 13, I don't know if I really saw it as a choice per se. It forced me to grow up. And I think in that shower story that you mentioned, I remember it very vividly. I was 60 pounds overweight, bald from head to toe, pulling chunks of hair out of the drain so the water could go down. Weeping, absolutely in tears. And I think it was in that moment of utter despair that I realized I didn't have a choice. I mean, yes, technically I did. I could either fight for my life or give up and die. And giving up and dying and quitting and leaving the planet, it's just wasn't an option in my eyes. It's something that I didn't want to happen. Obviously, it's something I didn't want for my parents to experience losing their firstborn son. So I think what I started doing was I didn't focus on not dying. I focused on living. And I think there's, to unbox that a little bit, with anything people are going through, the more you give attention and energy to something, the more it's going to happen. So a perfect example, somebody's getting anxious and they tell themselves, to stop thinking those negative thoughts, stop being anxious, stop being so scared. What happens? You feed that and you become more scared, as opposed to turning it around and telling yourself to calm down, be more confident. Same thing, going back to that little 13-year-old in the hospital or the shower floor. I could have given up, but I didn't, because I knew that there was so much more to life. And I also realized that, going through anything traumatic, you can choose how you want to come out on the other side. Even now, with how the world is and this state of uncertainty. Imagine you were going to bed. This happened to me. Imagine you're going to sleep night after night after night, terrified to close your eyes and fall asleep because you don't know if you're going to wake up the next morning or not.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the part that I was getting at, because look, we all have challenges in life and anxieties, and and some of us has real clinical depression, and a lot of us maybe have kind of like seasonal affective disorder. We all go through these little bouts of just mental challenges. So at 13, though, was it I mean, I obviously know your story, and you talked about you just decided that you were gonna get out of bed. You just decided that you were gonna get out of the hospital. But were you taught that? Did someone come in and talk to you a little bit about the power of positivity? Was it divine intervention, or was it just the vigor of a 13-year-old boy saying, you know what, man, I'm not leaving this place? Like what was it, or was it a combination of all of that stuff?
I think that's what it is. I don't think there was one silver bullet.
Yeah.
I think at the time, looking back at it and thinking out loud, at the time, I don't think I knew what it was. Looking back at it now, hindsight being 2020, I'm pretty certain it was me tapping into my personal core values, what mattered most to me. Family, my mom, my dad, my brother. I think that was one of the motivating factors. My health, obviously. And I was a competitive athlete for years. So one of the things my parents taught me was I never had to be the best. I had to be my best. So I focused on this self-improvement. So I think self-improvement, family, and my health, looking back at it, like I said, those were probably three of the main core values that pushed me forward. And it took it took me realizing that I was going to potentially lose that to continue fighting for my life. So looking back at it, I don't think I was too terrified of dying, because I think as a 13-year-old, you really don't understand the ramifications of cancer. You don't truly understand what death means. But I think now looking back at it, I was more afraid for my parents losing their child than I was losing my own life.
Yeah.
I think that's what got me moving forward.
So then a few years later, I think it was then 16, you'd mentioned it earlier. So then at 16 years old, you go in for a routine checkup, and they find a golf ball sized tumor on one of your lungs. And you're like, I'm from Boston. I would say, what the fuck? I mean, so you go in and you get this really bad news. They take immediate action. What's your mental state like then? You're like, well, I beat it once, I'm going to beat it again, because we're going to get into the odds, because the odds that you beat are just ridiculous. But so what's going through your head now?
I think initially what went through my head was exactly what you just said. What the fuck?
Right.
You know, I went through the first one. I didn't want to go through it again.
Right.
My life would be on pause. I wouldn't be able to be competitive in athletics. I wouldn't be a normal, quote unquote, normal kid. You know, I would stick out like a sore thumb. It was awful. I knew my life was going to be on pause. I knew I was going to have to go through the treatments again. I knew I was going to lose my hair again. I knew everything was just going to deteriorate in my life. And initially, there's no way in hell I wanted to do it again. You know, there were thoughts, you know, a couple times, yeah, I want to give up and die. Like, it's just, this isn't worth it. I don't want to continue fighting. Like, why am I constantly doing this battle uphill? And yeah, I got through the first one. I sure as shit didn't want to go through the other one. So after a while, I realized, all right, well, you know, I'm here for the long haul. I'm going to dig my heels in and I'm going to fight forward. Again, thinking about my family and leaving them behind, and the pain that it would leave on my mom and my dad and my brother, losing someone of their family. And then just realizing again, pushing forward, and also visualizing. I'm a huge believer in the mind-body connection. Visualizing myself swimming back and forth in the 50-meter breaststroke. That was one thing that kept me going. Because when I had bad days, I put myself in a place in my mind that was good. And I loved the competition. When I had good days, I was in the present moment, enjoying everything around me. So I had this balance of good and bad days, but I still, even though it was bad, I would try to put myself somewhere else that was pleasant.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, and do you think, you know, I'm just a big fan of organized sports, but I wrote down, be my best, not the best. That's such a great way to live, because I think if you're trying to live up to some people that you're just never going to get there, you're just going to be so disappointing. But do you think that your competitiveness too played a big role? Like, you know, as an athlete, you're like, man, this is a competition now. It's me and cancer.
Yeah, I do think looking back at it, it was like me versus cancer. You know, it's a race to get to the finish line. Whoever's going to get there lives. But I also, because I was competitive, I went against my doctor's best judgment, and I was still athletic. Nowhere near what I was when I was healthy. But I would wake up in the morning, I'd put in a mile on the track before I went to school. And then when I had those good days, I would go to school, and then I would come back out and I'd run with a track team or run with a cross country team, depending on the season.
While you still had cancer.
I ran, I think it was a 10K when I was going through treatment. Yeah. But I did it to push myself. And honestly, looking back at it, I think now, because I was training and running and being athletic while I was going through the treatments, I think it helped my body handle the treatments better. It definitely helped my mind, because it was almost like an analogy of me running away from the cancer. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, in a second, I want to kind of like leapfrog from your 16 to not to necessarily where you are now, but we're going to skip over the college years, because I saw your speech and said it was like Animal House, so we could probably skip over that, which was probably a lot of fun, and you deserved every second of it. We are on with Sean Swarner. You know, he's been ranked as one of the top 8 most inspirational people of our time. And if you've been listening just for a few minutes or just watching for a few minutes, I think you would agree. And when you hear the things that he's accomplished, it's just truly amazing. If you'd like some more information about Sean, you can just go to SeanSwarner.com. It's SWARNER.com. He's also on Instagram, same thing, his full name. You can just Google him. His speeches are out there. He's a keynote speaker. He's got some challenges. He's an author as well. We'll talk a little bit about some of the things that he's doing to help others within, it doesn't really, whether you have cancer, doesn't really matter. He's helping people all over the world kind of break through. He's a peak performance coach. And man, I tell you, if anybody is looking for credentials, this guy has the credentials to be a peak performance coach. So Sean, all right. So now you beat this. You're one lung down, right? Because you had to have a lung removed, right?
Actually, I have both. There's so much scar tissue from the radiation therapy. There's no oxygen transfer.
Okay. So you have both, but only one works.
Yeah, exactly. One functioning lung.
Okay. And so you again, the fact you graduate college, you, at one point, by the way, I think I saw in your bio, the second time around in cancer, you were given 2 weeks. So for the first couple months to live, you actually had your last rites read to you, right? Too, as well.
I remember a man of the cloth coming in, 16 years old. He was at the end of the bed, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And I remember looking at my mom and I literally asked her, what the hell's he doing? No, I'm not dead yet. And the hospital wanted me to write out a living will at 16. My brother's 3 years younger than I am. I looked at my parents again. And I was like, what do they want? My brother's going to get my hand-me-downs anyhow.
Yeah, it's wild, man. So now here we are, you're past college and, what gave you, so you're a world record holder for, let's just talk about some of the things you've done. So one of the biggest things is, you climbed Mount Everest, and you're also I think you're the only person in the world to beat these two types of cancer, because one of them, I believe you were given a 6% chance to live, or a 4% chance to live. I forget what it was. And then again, you've climbed Mount Everest, you've done all these other things. So let's just talk about that. You had mentioned earlier, the odds. What were the actual odds of you surviving?
Well, you're right, because no one's ever had these two cancers before, and no one, to my knowledge, has ever had these two cancers. Yeah, again. So Hodgkin's and Askin sarcoma, and the chances of me surviving both of them is roughly the same as winning the lottery 4 times in a row with the same numbers.
Is that 7 trillion? Is that 1 in 7 trillion? Was that
something insane like that? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So by the way, do you play the lottery?
I have, when it gets up to $1 billion, guess how many numbers?
You already won, man. You've already won. So you've already won. So you know what? Don't waste your money, I guess. Right. I mean, the big ones, you have to enter the big ones just because,
yeah. It's tossing $10, $10 or $20.
How crazy
zero numbers.
How crazy would that be if you one of these $1 billion ones, you won that? That would be, you would definitely go down as, already, top 8, one of the most inspirational people of all time. Imagine if you did win the lottery,
God.
the $1 billion one, right? That would be just crazy.
That'd be sweet.
I think now that I'm talking to this, I know I'm getting off subject a little. I usually don't get off topic, but it's just kind of crazy to me thinking about it. I think you probably have a better chance than most.
Yeah, I'm going to go buy a ticket when the snow clears up, and I'm going to play the lottery tomorrow. I'll let you know if I win or not.
Oh man. All right, cool. All right. So I don't know the timeline of what's what, because you've done so many different things since then. But so Mount Everest, so was that the first big thing that you decided you were going to accomplish?
That was the first big mountain. I became, world record wise, the first cancer survivor to climb Everest.
So tell us a little bit about that. I know a little bit about the preparation. How long of a prep period? What's the team like? How long did it take? Let's literally just walk us through it, because I think it's an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. So normally people train for years to go up this thing. When I came up with the idea, I was living in Jacksonville, Florida, and the highest point in Florida, I think it's the top of the Four Seasons Hotel in Miami. So yeah. I don't think the hotel management would appreciate me going up and down their stairs all day. So my brother and I packed up our Honda Civic and moved to Colorado. And for about 2 months, we were basically homeless. We were living out of the back of my car and camping. And the payphone bank and the library was actually my office. So I'm reaching out to corporations to get sponsorship, and they're asking, well, what number can I reach you back at? And I'm like, well, I don't have a number, but here's my email.
So we're the same age. So are you 46?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay, because I saw you. So we graduated high school same time, college same thing. Okay, so yeah, so at that time, there were cell phones, but they were like a bag phone. I had one. I thought it was cool. At a bag phone. Right. Yeah. So people didn't have cell phones like they do now. Like everybody has them. Homeless people have them. Everybody has a cell phone. But back then, it wasn't a thing. So right. So it's hard to get a hold, especially if you're living out of your car.
Yeah. So I had nothing, but I knew I was going to go over there and head to Nepal 10 months later. So I was training only for 10 months. We finally found a place called Evergreens on Fall River. They're up in Estes Park. They have satellite cabins, and they let my brother and I stay there for free. And in exchange, we would actually help with the maintenance of the property. So we kind of did like a barter system. They became a sponsor, and we helped out on the property. And then when the time came to actually start approaching Everest organizers, it was weird because, well, let's just pretend you run expeditions to Everest. And you get a phone call from me. I'm like, hey, I'm a 2-time cancer survivor with 1 lung. I have pretty much no experience. And in 10 months, I'm going to go climb Everest. What do you say? Not at all.
Right.
Yeah, you're crazy. I mean, I was once told that 9 months in Estes Park does not a Himalayan climber make. And that was by a really, really well-known outdoor author. Other people said it was physiologically impossible to climb Everest with 1 lung. People said that I would never make it past Camp 2. All this negativity just kept being bombarded at me, but I just didn't listen.
Right.
So when the time came, my brother and I sold my entire life savings to follow a dream, flew over there, climbed Everest, came back home as the first cancer survivor to summit the top of the world.
And you did it you had no sponsors?
We had Gore-Tex with Cabela's. Crazy thing. I didn't even have a summit suit when I got to base camp. So we kept reaching out to different companies, and the North Face sent me this down summit suit in a box that literally got to Kathmandu, and all it said was Sean Swarner Everest Base Camp. It showed up 2 days before I was supposed to push for the summit.
So what is like the cost to do that? So if let's say I wanted to climb Mount Everest like today, what's the cost? Like, is it 10, 20 grand, like all in, and that's on a budget, or like realistically, like what is it really? I mean, I'm talking flights, food, gear, the whole thing.
A lot's changed since I climbed. And when I did it, it was $70,000 for a permit. But you could put 7 people on that permit. So just to be able to have the paperwork from the government in Nepal to go up the mountain legally, you had to pay $10,000 just to get permission to get on the mountain.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I'm pretty sure that money goes to just a handful of people in Nepal. It doesn't really get spread out too much in the government to help anybody else. But then through an expedition company, then you have to hire Sherpas, who are the local guides. You have to hire some yaks to haul your gear up to base camp, because getting to base camp takes 14 days just by itself. And then hire a cook. My brother was at base camp. I had a cook at base camp, 2 Sherpas and me. So we were on we didn't even have shoelaces. So we weren't even on a shoestring budget. We were on a Velcro budget. Like, we didn't even have shoelaces going up there. But I would say it costs pretty much as an expensive car, not like, a Bugatti or anything, but I would say a high-end BMW.
And how long does it take?
I got to base camp April 8th. Keeping in mind that it took 14 days to get there, and I was in Kathmandu for about 4 days before that. I got to base camp April 8th. I summited May 16th.
About 3
Over
weeks?
a month.
Month? Oh, it's over a month all in. Okay, over a month. That's wow. Now, were there moments when you were there where you're like, this is too much?
Oh, absolutely. Have you ever gone a month and a half without showering?
No. A couple days, you know.
Yeah, you get to a point where you just get sick and tired of it. You can smell yourself.
Right.
But there was a moment I was up at on what's called the Lhotse ice face, and it was a sheet of bulletproof ice at a 45-degree angle, and it went on for a mile. And if you took a step at like half an inch in one direction, you would tumble a mile. I mean, I lost a friend there, and I remember looking up at the glacier where he landed. I could see this like 3 spots where he landed, and then the blood streak that came down.
Wait, you lost a friend when you were going up?
Yeah, I met a guy, because going up, like I said, it takes 14 days, and you quickly bond with people when you have something in common like that. So I got to know him really well. His name was Peter. He was from England, and we got to know each other fairly well. And he didn't have any kids. He wasn't married. He just had his mom and dad at home. And I remember going up where he fell, and I could see where he tumbled down. Like I said, the snow was blood red because that's where his body landed, and then the streak down. And then, good old news, and I think it was Reuters or AP or whoever put it out there. Anonymous climber dies on Everest. Like they don't even put names. So my mom and dad are at home. They read this, and I get on the phone, the satellite phone we had. I'm talking to mom and dad saying, "Hey, it's not me. Don't worry. I'm in tears. They're in tears. Everyone's freaking out." And then I start questioning, well, why would he die, and why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I die? I mean, there were numerous bodies I stepped over going up there as well, because people die on Everest all the time. And I remember going past, stepping over a couple bodies, going around a couple legs and boots sticking out, old tents. I mean, it's a graveyard up there. So I'm thinking, why would I be allowed? I guess if you look at it from that perspective, because a lot of people say that they're going to conquer the mountain, but in all honesty, if it's you versus Mother Nature, she's going to kick your ass every single time. I don't care who you are.
Right.
So you don't conquer the mountain, you conquer yourself. And it's really important to keep your wits about you, because if I'm going up there and I'm thinking to myself, what if Mother Nature doesn't allow me up? What if something happens? But you have to really learn to keep those thoughts at bay. And that's why back in the story of me being in the shower floor, I focused on living. I didn't focus on not dying. Same thing with making it to the top of Everest. I wasn't focused on not falling. I was focused on making it to the top.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's man, I just listened to your story, and I got my grateful hat on, and a lot of people, are grateful for a lot of things, but you truly are. I mean, you were at that store multiple times, that you were not in control of. And then you do these death-defying things. We'll talk a little bit more about them as well. So then you put yourself like in danger to accomplish these great things. But I want to talk a little bit about, since we're talking specifically, about Mount Everest, the Summit Challenge that you have. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing for people, and what is the Summit Challenge, and how can people learn about it? Where do they go? And what is it going to do for them?
You can go to thesummitchallenge.com, and that's ready, but we're going to be pushing out the Big Hill Challenge as the first challenge. I want it to be a 3-week long challenge where I just want 100 people to join the challenge, and we're going to be launching it, I think, next week or the week after. But it's a series of personal challenges based on your personal core values. And the idea came to me when I was giving keynote presentations, when we actually could have these live events. After my presentations and after I was done speaking, there was always be a queue of people who were wanting to talk to me. And I love hearing other people's stories. That gets me motivated. That gets me moving. But there were always, I would say 10% of the people who would come up and they would say, "That's a great story and all, but how did you do it?" Because in my presentation, I talk about how one of my first goals was to literally crawl 8 feet from the hospital bed to the bathroom. And then, as you know, I climbed to the top of the world. And then I started thinking about Kilimanjaro, which I take a group up every year as a fundraiser for a cancer charity. And July 24th will be my 21st summit of Kilimanjaro, if anyone's interested in going. The average success rate on Kili is 48%, meaning 52 out of 100 people who attempt the summit don't make it, which is huge, right? But the groups I take up, we're at 98% success rate. So I started thinking, why are we double the success of everybody else? Then I realized that I was imparting the lessons that I've learned going through these cancers, my mountaineering experience that you said we'll get into later. And I was imparting that into the people going up the mountain. Each day I would give them something to do while they're going up the mountain, whether it be focusing on the personal core values, vivid visualization, mindfulness, the compound effect, you name it. And the big one are the gales, what I call the 4 gales that limit people, the gremlins, the interpretations, the assumptions, and the limiting beliefs. So what the Big Hill Challenge is, the abridged version of the Summit Challenge, they're a series of personal, and by personal, I mean, it's unique in the aspect that if you look at the past 50 or 60 years of the personal growth industry, it's always been one guru saying, you need to do this, this, and this will be your result. But that doesn't work for everybody. You know, you have a different perspective on life than I do. I have a different perspective on life than most people. What matters to you doesn't necessarily matter to me. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no judgment.
Right.
But you need to tap it. And people are always asking, well, what should I do? Well, do what matters most to you. You know, you mentioned it earlier. Stop chasing other people's dreams.
Right.
Because as soon as you start chasing someone else's dreams, you leave who you are behind. You know, there are almost 8 billion people on the planet, and we're all unique individuals, and we need to focus on that. So this helps people focus on and know what their personal core values are in utilizing little tiny micro changes to make a huge difference in their life later on.
I love it. So right behind me, right there, is a book called 5% More. And it's exactly what you're talking about. You mentioned the compound effect. Darren Hardy wrote that book, and it's my book is not the same, but you know, and it actually was inspired by a spin class I was in. I won't get into the whole story, but basically, you know, what I've learned, and you know it as well, is this is a universal truth, right? Most human beings cannot do these, you know, look, I'm a friend with Grant Cardone, and I think he's doing some cool things like the 10X and all these other things. But most people, our human brains and our anatomy is not wired in a way in which you can just go all in. You have to have those, like you said, those micro steps, those micro challenges, going from the bed to the bathroom, from the bathroom to the hallway to the end of the hall. And then we can, in fact, you know, grow on those things. And that's what works, right? I mean, these, you know, you didn't just go to Mount Everest on day one and just hike it. Right. I'm sure we didn't even talk about the preparation, but you did prepare for 10 months. Sometimes people take years, but you know, you started out on a hill first, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That makes the most sense. All right. So in a second, I want to talk a little bit more about these other things. I mean, you've been all over the world. I think you've skied in the North Pole and the South Pole and doing some other things. I want to talk a little bit about that when we get back. Again, we're on with Sean Swarner. I mean, man, like, it's just like, it's unbelievable what you've accomplished, man. It's, and you know, to overcome cancer twice, sometimes people will just stop there and maybe they'll get on a speaking circuit and tell people how they overcame things. But he's gone on to do even more amazing things, and he's helping others as well to show them that, look, whatever it is you're going through, you can push through. And a lot of it does have to do with your mental state. So if you'd like some more information about Sean, you can go to seanswarner.com. He's very active on Instagram and right on his page, as well as, you know, you can click through to the Summit Challenge. If you want to hire this guy as a speaker, whether COVID exists or not, whenever you see this or listen to this, you know, look, everybody's doing these Zoom speeches. I did a Zoom speech. It's actually kind of fun. It's easy. You don't have to get on a plane, you know, and there was a lot of people there. So if you want some information about Sean, go to seanswarner.com. It's SEANSWARNER.com. Same thing for Instagram. You can find him. He has that blue check box that I don't have that I really want next to his name as well. So, all right, man. So, all right, you've also written 2 books, I believe. You have another book coming out. Tell us a little bit more about some of these physical things that you've done, and so you're a world record holder. Are you a world record holder of the only cancer survivor to meet the summit of Mount Everest, or is it more to the world record, or do you have more than one? You probably have more than one.
So I'm the first cancer survivor to climb Mount Everest, the first cancer survivor to complete the 7 summits, which is the highest mountain on each continent. The first cancer survivor to do the Explorer's Grand Slam, which I personally, I think it sounds like a Denny's breakfast platter, but I didn't name it. The Everest, 7 summits, and the Explorer's Grand Slam is the 7 summits and the North and South Poles. And then if you add in the World Championship Ironman Triathlon in Hawaii, I'm the only person who's ever done that.
All right, that's it. We're ending it. I just feel like such a loser, man.
Good, 5% more. Come on, just start today. A little bit more.
I just got to push just a little bit. A buddy of mine, after I came out with it, he goes, I'm writing a book too. And I said, what's it called? He goes, 6% more. It's 1%. It's 1% better. So tell us a little bit about your book. So your first book, I think is it called 7 Summits? Is that what it's called?
The first one's called Keep Climbing. That was written a while ago. Keep Climbing, How I Beat Cancer and Reached the Top of the World. And it was published by Atria, which is a subsidiary of Simon & Schuster. Mm-hmm. And I argued with them. I hope no one's listening from there, but I hope they are listening now. I argued with them tooth and nail because they promoted it as a climbing book. And my 2 questions for them were, how many climbers do you know?
Right.
How many people touched by cancer do you know?
Right.
So they missed the boat on that one. They didn't advertise it they didn't market it as a to the cancer industry, the cancer world, which they should have. The second one I just signed, and we're getting ready to publish it, I would say, in the next few months. But it's going to be a series of books called the 7 Summits to Success. And the first one is Conquering Your Everest. So it's basically helping people understand, again, what their personal core values are. So the books kind of correlate to the program.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. So I want to get into, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but, I wanted to get into, I wrote down perspective, I think, in one of your speeches. And I think it's, I think it's a undervalued, edict, so to speak, where people lack perspective, so like, I tell people, we all go through our own shit. And, when I'm going through stuff, I'm like, man, like, this is just brutal. But my reality and my difficult times would be a lot of people's dreams, right? So tell us a little bit about perspective and why perspective is so important for people to kind of overcome the things that they're going through.
Absolutely. And as you were talking, I was thinking, how can I relate this back to something that you love doing? Poker, right? You're all sitting at the same table. You're seeing, you're all seeing the same things,
right?
But you don't know what the other person has. So your perspective on what you're doing is completely different.
Right.
So for me, going through 2 cancers, I have a completely different perspective on life. I think I'm more afraid of not living than I am of dying because of that. And so many people are looking at the world from their sheltered perspective because they're afraid to step out their front door or they're afraid to step out of their comfort zone. But I can guarantee you that life is just beyond that line of comfort. If you just step over that line, there's an entire world of exploration waiting for you and excitement. Who wants to say, oh, I lived to be 110 years old, but I never left the house? Mm-hmm. I would rather live to be 80 and say that I lived a completely full and intentional life. So whatever perspective you have, just open your eyes to other perspectives, because that might bring you more enjoyment in life. That might bring you to be more alive and living, because there are so many people who are alive, but they're afraid to truly live because they have potentially a closed mindset as opposed to an open mindset where they see all the obstacles as opposed to all the opportunities. Looking at it from perspectives of being in a relationship. How many times are people afraid to break up with someone or leave someone, even though deep down they know it's no good, but they stay there because it's comfortable. It's what they know. They're comfortable with that. They're afraid of what they're going to lose as opposed to looking at everything they could potentially gain. And I think that's what people need to start looking at. Start looking at the positive aspects of things, because we have a choice on how we want to come out on the other side. We can be bitter and angry, or we can see it as an incredible opportunity to go out and explore.
Yeah, man, it's, I was gonna say we can end it there, but I just want to ask you some more questions. So like, how does one, I mean, it sounds easy. Just go ahead and do it. Like, hey, you know what, man? Like, just break up with that person you know you should have broken up with before.
Yeah.
Go and run that 5K that you didn't think you could do, or at least start to prepare for it. Or go ahead and write the book. I have so many people. I help people with their books. I have so many people say, "Oh, I was gonna write a book." How does someone start, man? Is it just like you just have to just fucking man up and just start? I mean, like I always tell people, no one else is gonna do it for you, whatever it is. I mean, is there a secret? Like, I mean.
I think there is, and it's in that program I mentioned.
Yeah.
The Summit Challenge or the Big Hill Challenge, and I'm going to try to show you something. I don't know if you can read that or not, but I put together the core values list.
Yep.
And this comes with the challenge, and I take it a little bit further to actually help people explore where they're lacking in their personal core values. So here is something here: responsibility, security, stability, success. Then you rank those, and then you can have a visual representation of what means most to you, and you can start focusing on exactly where you're lacking to build that section up. So for me, when I first took my own core values assessment, I value family, and I rated myself as actually living that value at like a 4. So looking at it made me feel incredibly sad. So what I want to do, I want to be more mindful and start putting more energy and attention into the family. So if people want to have personal growth as one of their core values, they can start focusing on that, and whatever that means to them. Again, going back to perspective, people might see a different value or a different definition of personal growth. For some people, climbing Everest is literally climbing Everest. For others, it's getting off the couch and walking around the block. But if you know the purpose behind what you're doing, I think Simon Sinek calls it the why.
Right.
This is deeper than the why. This shows you where, how, what, and why. But if you can pinpoint that, which this is what this does, contribution, curiosity, determination, excellence, family, faith, fitness, happiness, health, whatever you want to focus on, make sure it's what you want, not what someone else wants for you, so you can remain genuine to yourself.
Yeah, as I'm listening to you talk about, it's the Big Hill Challenge, that's what it's called, yeah?
Big Hill.
As I'm listening to you talk about that, and you answered my question, but I think the more you said it, you answered the question even more, because I was like, well, can't people just man up, just go ahead and do it? But I think, something like the Big Hill Challenge or the Summit Challenge is what a lot of people, I mean, you hear it all the time. I mean, there's a lot of great programs out there. There's a lot of not so great ones as well. But for someone like you, who's literally been through just achieved extraordinary things, but literally faced death, to show people, how to find their why in essence, or their core values. I think that like the Big Hill Challenge is something that's so important for people, because for me, it has been books and other inspirational people and mentors, and to kind of help me break through things. And I've gone through, I've done, like a weekend retreats and things like that. And you always seem to find something that you didn't even know that you had within you. And I think it's hard. So it also goes back to when you were 13 years old, when I asked you the question, like, where did it come from? And you said, well, I think it was all 3. So you had, or multiple things. So you had all these things, but something like your challenge is something that people really need to pay attention to and think about if they want more things out of life, whatever it is. Like you said, success is different for me. My perspective is different from your perspective. But do you find that, when people have worked with you, they come back to you and say, you know what, I don't think I would have ever seen that, or I don't think I would have ever done that if it wasn't for connecting with you or doing the things that you kind of had me do?
Absolutely. And I was looking for my phone because I just recently got a text. I'm just gonna, instead of looking it up, I'll see if I can go off memory. But I got a text from a lady who's in the program right now, and I hesitate to call it a program, because usually when you hear that, you think of everything that's out there right now. You were saying, some things are good, some things are bad. Yeah, and they're programs built by someone else for someone else based on what that person knows. Like I said,
we could listen. We go down this rabbit. I think it's fucking insane. But anyway, so
Yeah.
So again, before you get into that text, and we'll go down that rabbit hole a little bit. You know, the thing about Sean, and the thing about people that have been on the Alden Report, you know, we vet people, you know, I'm a lawyer by trade, so I'm pretty good at vetting people and checking things out. And, you know, they're usually like referrals. And so when I look at what you've done and I listen to you and your story, you're as real as it gets. And so someone like you, who's going to put someone, you want to call it a course, whatever it is, you know, a mental, whatever, and it's whatever we want to call it. You're authentic. You're real. You've gone through it. You're doing it. And you know, you're not like you're a professional coach or any of these guys that are like coaches who've never done shit in their life. They just, they have, like you said, they have a program that someone else gave them. And now they're selling them a program, how to be successful. They've never been successful at anything in their life other than being successful at selling someone else's program. Like, this is your stuff. You've gone through it and you've helped others. So I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off because I said I wasn't going to go down that rabbit hole. Did we just strike a chord? Maybe a little bit. But it's important because what you are doing is real, man. You know what I mean? It comes from a real place of almost dying twice, right?
Absolutely. And I didn't write this to make money. I wrote this because you get to, I think this will really hit home, I hope. You get to, I don't want to say an age, but you get to a point in your life where, for me, climbing Kilimanjaro, you know, I've been up there 21 times. I know I can make it. It's not about the challenge anymore. And this is going to come out really wrong. When I get people to the top, I love seeing them cry, you know, but those emotions of happiness and elation and goal accomplishment. So you get to a stage in your life where, like for Christmas, you get more out of giving gifts than you do receiving gifts. This is my gift.
Right.
The challenge is my gift. And I love hearing from people. It happens every day, getting a message from somebody. Saying you changed my life, or whatever it might be. The lady, when she took it, I asked her, how's it life changing? And she said, I'm a better mother, I'm a better daughter, I'm a better wife, and I'm a better friend because of it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I mean, that's what the world needs more of. We don't need more arrogant people saying, hey, I'm better than you, buy my shit. No, we need more people to work together to help the betterment of the world itself. And I think if we all focus on that, as opposed to being bombarded by what the media wants us to go after, you know, helping, trying to convince me I need to buy, you know, the new Ferrari or whatever, that stuff's not going to make you feel good. All of those shiny things aren't going to be shiny forever. You know, if you want to feel worthy, if you want to have value, you have to feel worthy first.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because, you know, this is not about me, but you know, I remember, you know, I'm a kid from the projects, grew up with nothing. And I wanted a Lexus and I got the big sedan, and I remember getting it, and I was getting in the car and I drove away and I felt nothing. Like, I didn't feel joy. I feel excitement, I felt nothing. And prior to that, I had the Rolex that I wanted, and I bought that and I felt nothing. And it's really bizarre because I thought I would feel something. And I've bought a bunch of other stuff since, you know, and I think a lot of people, that shit just wears off, man. But the memories and the things that, like, you know, climbing Kilimanjaro or Everest or, you know, going to all these different places in the world, that's the stuff that sticks with you, man. That's the stuff that makes you rich. I was watching one of your speeches that basically is what you just said. Like, none of that stuff matters. Like, the material things don't matter. Yeah. It doesn't make you happy.
No, not at all. I mean, happiness is a choice. You know, I was coaching a guy once, and he wanted to double his income from 75 to 150. And I kept asking him questions like, well, why? Why? He's like, well, because when I get that, you know, 150, I'll be happy. I'm like, so when you get 150, you're going to choose to be happy. Absolutely. Well, if it's a choice, why don't you choose to be happy now?
Right.
But keep in mind, he was also the same guy I was coaching. He didn't fully understand what unconditional love was. So I told him, well, do me a favor. Take your wife, take your dog, and put them both in the trunk of your car. Come back 3 hours later, who's happy to see you? That's unconditional love.
we know who's going to be the happy one there. So I was going to say leave it on that. We can't leave it on that. All right. So, but before I let you go, I mean, you've given such great value, man, and your story is amazing. And I'm just really, truly blessed to have you here. But for those listening right now, can you maybe give me some words of encouragement? We're obviously going through some tough times right now. What are there certain maybe things, like I know that people have routines that people do every day. Maybe we'll end it with this, like, what do you do every day? Like, because actually, two things before we end. One, do you have bad days? And then two, what do you do to overcome them? And then three, and we'll end it on that, what's your routine like every day that the average everyday person could do?
All right, you lost me. What was question one again?
I forget. One, do you have bad days?
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. How do I get over them?
Yeah.
I have bad days all the time, but I know that it's a temporary state, not a permanent condition.
Right.
So again, I let those bad days go. I do what I can do. I do my my morning routine, my daily routine. But if it just doesn't feel good, I put in as much effort as I can. And I know that I don't feel good for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I let it go. And I come back stronger tomorrow or the next day, whatever. But I know that it's temporary. It's not going to last forever. So if I'm depressed one day, it doesn't mean I'm a depressive person. That's not my condition. That's just a day. Let it go. That's fine. And my daily routine, I wake up in the morning, 4:30, 5 o'clock, make some coffee. But before I do any of that stuff, I grab my journal and I write down, because I have a bookend that I do, and I write down my morning affirmation. And I write down 3 things I will try to do and 3 things I will learn to do. So actually, kind of today is funny. It was like, today my value affirmation is, I am more valuable than I give myself credit. I determine my own worth.
It's awesome. I love it. I heard, I saw your speech. You talked about, you remind yourself of 5 things that you're grateful for, and then you write, and then you journal about one of them. And I think it's really important, kind of what you said too, is the routine, and a lot of every successful person, and however we define success, it's a very fluid term, but I'm just going to use the term successful in the broadest sense, person that I've ever met or ever talked to has some sort of routine. Whether it's getting up in the morning early, whether it's meditation, whether it's stretching, whether it's exercising every day, whether it's, nutrition, or it's a combination of all those things, they all seem to have a routine. And I think that's the one key common element to health, happiness, and success, is to having some sort of routine, right?
Absolutely. And I think even going a little bit further than that, you could probably break down each one of those little bits of routine into their personal core values. So health, if somebody exercises; happiness, if they want to meditate; personal growth, if they want to have a different morning routine where they set themselves up for success. So I think once you understand what your personal core values are, you can start focusing on whatever means most to you and get the most out of life.
I love it. We're gonna end it there, man. It was, again, super happy to have you here. We've been on with Sean Swarner. He's actually ranked and voted as one of the top 8 most inspirational people of our time, not of our year, of our time. And you know what? Again, I don't even care who the other 7 people are, because he's inspired me. Again, if you've listened to this story, I go back, rewind it, and listen to it again, and think about the things that he's done and the things that he's overcome. You can also learn more about Sean by going to SeanSwarner.com. It's SeanSwarner.com. He's got the Summit Challenge. He's also has the Big Heal Challenge that, depending on when you're listening to this, may have just come out or is coming out. Check him out on Instagram as well. He's got some cool things going on there, and he's doing some amazing things. He's changing people's lives, and these are the type of people that we have on the Alden Report. And listen, if you've enjoyed this version of the Alden Report, whether you're watching it on YouTube, whether you're listening to it, on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever it is you're listening to it, I'd ask that you do a couple things. Forward this to your friends, forward this to your relatives, forward this to your neighbors. And I don't ask this all the time at the end of my podcast, because, I just don't need to. But I think that after listening to Sean and quite frankly, everybody that's been on this podcast, but, Sean has inspired me. And I think a lot of people need to hear what he has done and what he has overcome, because there are a lot of people out there that are hurting today. And but you, by forwarding this to someone and asking them to listen to it or watch it, I think it truly can change their life. So again, if you want some more information about Sean, if you're a corporation, if you want to book him to speak, whether it's virtual or whether it's live, I don't know where we're going to be in the next few months. He can do both. Go to SeanSwarner.com. This has been another just amazing program. Thank you so much for having, spending the time with us here, Sean. My name is Mike Alden. That's Sean Swarner, and we'll see you soon.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by ConnectionCapital.com. That's ConnexTion Capital.com. That's ConnexTion Capital.com. You are one connection away from your life changing forever. Have you ever tried to connect with somebody on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or even Clubhouse, and you couldn't quite connect with them? That's because the biggest gap in the world is the gap of access. It's not the wealth gap. It's not the credit gap. It's the access gap. ConnectionCapital.com is leveling the playing field, and it's free to join. Visit ConnectionCapital.com, ConnexTion Capital.com. Again, it's ConnexTion Capital.com. You are one connection away from your life changing forever.